Blog Talk Radio.
Archangels, ghosts, and Bigfoot, oh my. It's just another night for Supernatural Girls. Real stories, real answers to life's biggest supernatural mysteries. And now for another exciting interview with paranormal experts from this world and others. Here's your host, paranormal researcher Patricia Baker, on the one, the only, Supernatural Girls.
Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of Supernatural Girls Radio. I'm your host, Patricia Baker, and I'm here with my co-host, PK. How you doing tonight all the way in Tucson?
Yes, absolutely. Delightful day, nice and warm sun, beautiful breeze. Scares me. Something nasty must be coming to happen.
I know. Well, we had a couple of really very cold days. And guess what wasn't working? Our heat.
Your furnace. I just knew it.
Yes.
As soon as you said
You just knew it. It was a rough 2 days, I'll tell you, because not being used to the cold and then having it so cold in the house, I was
Your
pretty
house
grumpy.
Is cold. Yeah.
Yes, it
that's
can be cold if the
house.
heat doesn't work. Yeah, I know. Well, finally the guys came today to fix it. They were working here for 6 hours. It's fixed, but it takes a long time to heat this place up, so I am still a little bit on the freezing side. But anyways, I'm glad you made it on the show. I know both you and our wonderful guest tonight, Nick, had trouble getting on the Blog Talk board, but thank God you made it. So
by the
all is
skin
right
of our
with the
teeth,
world.
both of us.
Yeah, you sure did. I was sweating it. But anyways.
Challenges that keep us going.
Yeah. So tell me, what do you have for us tonight? I think you have something a little more unusual.
Well, what I've been thinking about is everybody likes to know who they are, what year they're in, etc. So I'm going to make it very simple. If you add your month and day of birth together, reduce it to a single digit, and add that to the universal 5-year, that will tell you what your personal year is.
And the personal year starts now, right?
That's right. So,
oh boy,
since the 5, we're on a bridge period right now, so you could add it to a 6 because that's what the year is going to be. That will tell you exactly where you are. So for myself, 10 and 19, I end up adding to the 6. So lucky me, I end up being able to follow right through it. If you're always looking for something new, if you add your month and day of birth together, which is 10/17 for me, which is the 27/9, then whatever the year is, universal year is, 2022 that we're going into is going to make it a 6 universal year. So add your single digit of your birth month and day to the 6. That will tell you what your personal year is this year. That we're going into right now, the new year, okay? Because starting October, that is our preview of the coming year. So for every
now
man,
on
woman,
your
and
website,
child,
do you have the information so people can look up their year? I mean their number, their personal number on your website?
I'm going to put some more information up there for everybody because the nicest part about it is if you're in a 1, you're going to get fresh starts and new beginnings. If you're in a 2, you're going to be looking for that partner or partnership or looking to ditch the partner you have. It'll be one or the other. Remember, what goes up must come down, so you get both sides of the spectrum.
Right.
If it's 3, you get a lot of communications, and a lot of that's really good, and it gives you ideas of where to go and what to do. And 3 also deals with gossip, so you can kind of tone it down however you want to. Either throw it out there or, up pops Beelzebub if you don't do it right. But the 4 is going to give everybody a hint to get ready to make it or break it. Anything to do with land and property is going to go really good for that person. And if they're in a 5, They get to make some major changes, good to bad, bad to good, but predominantly it's going to be good. It's going to give them a chance if they decide they want to change the job, make a move of home, whatever. Perfect year for them to do it in 2022. If you're in a 6, that's when a lot of times people decide that they'll take another chance on that marriage or the first marriage, putting things together, but it's all about family. And family always includes our pets. That's what people forget about. It's the 6th year, anytime we're in that, you've got extra things to do with and for the pets, and that's always a positive. And if you're in a 7, get those legal things off the table, get things taken care of, clean it out. And if you want to go back to school or study anything, perfect year to do it. Absolutely great.
Oh, good.
If you find you're in an 8 year, that's when you want to rub your little hands together and go for making some money. There's a luck factor that goes with it and gives you some opportunities. And if it ends up that you're in a 9, the 9 is all about the world at large. It's what we can do for others, and it's anything to do with the theater, acting, or artistic of anything. You'll find that that'll be a good time to start reaching out for that kind of stuff. But I'll put some more stuff up on the site. Give you a little more.
Yeah, please. And that would be great. PatriciaKirkman.com is where you can go to get more information on this. And, of course, you can get your own personal reading with Patricia. You can schedule that any time that it's convenient for both of you. I highly recommend it, especially with all the crazy stuff that's going on.
Our world is
need as much. Oh, we need as much guidance.
Even of your imagination.
Yeah, right. Let's go, Brandon. So,
we are paying attention. Prior to Halloween, we are dealing with Beelzebub. That's it. We'll just call it that.
I think so. I think so. Actually, there were some remote viewers that Farsight just did a big remote view on Lucifer. It was very interesting. Very interesting. You find it on YouTube, and it's worth watching. They have some very talented remote viewers, and they had a lot to say that was quite different than what I expected. So very, very interesting stuff. So that's Farsight on YouTube. So let's see. Yeah, and I want to keep recommending to everybody a couple of books. One is, Are You Getting Screwed on Your Property Taxes? How to Find Out and How to Fix It. I really suggest you get that book. As I mentioned, it's by Patricia Quintillian, who's an attorney, and it is an older book, but it's still got great information. With all the taxes they're talking about sticking us with, I really suggest you buy that book. It's on Amazon, and read it, especially the horror stories. They're quite entertaining, as long as it's not you, but you really need to know your rights. So I suggest you pick that up and read it. We also have Opus Mago Kabbalisticum, which is the first English translation of this very old German text. It's fascinating. The translation was done by a professor here at Smith College, and the foreword was written by our friend Lon Duquette. So another great book to have in your library. And it's a treasure. It really is a treasure. If you're looking for a gift for anybody, I highly recommend that one. And, of course, Lon's book, which is my favorite, My Life with the Spirits. I can't recommend that highly enough, especially if you need a good laugh, because that is so humorous, just like his personality. He writes like he is, and it's hilarious, and it's a wonderful, wonderful break from everything that we're going through right now in this world. So, My Life with the Spirits, great book. So, tonight, we're talking about one of our favorite subjects tonight, time travel. And I don't think we've ever had, you wish you could. Maybe we'll find out how when we talk to our guest tonight, author Nick Redfern. Now, Nick is a full-time author and journalist specializing in a wide range of unsolved mysteries, including Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster, UFO sightings, government conspiracies, alien abductions, and paranormal phenomena. He writes regularly for the London Daily Express newspaper, Fortean Times, Fate, and UFO Magazine. His previous books include Three Men Seeking Monsters, Strange Secrets, Cosmic Crashes, and the FBI Files, and I know there's many more. But his latest book is Time Travel, the Science and Science fiction. So, Nick, welcome to the show.
Oh, well, thanks for having me on again.
Oh,
it's always great to have you on. Yeah, you're so knowledgeable about everything, all paranormal things. That's why we love having you here.
Yeah. Well, some things I'm
not. No, I'm going to give you credit anyways. But this new book, I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to peruse it ahead of your interview tonight, but I will get a copy for both of us because it looks absolutely fascinating. But before we go into time travel, I have a question for you. And I mentioned it briefly before we got on the air, and it's about something called the Fuzzy Man. I didn't know if you ever heard of this one, but there was a story about a young boy who disappeared, never found. And then years later, his brother disappeared. Again, these are young children, like under 10. And they found him alive this time. And he talked about being taken by a fuzzy man. And his mother was a big Bigfoot fan. And she asked him, well, was it hairy? And he said, no, it wasn't. And he said it had no eyes and no mouth. And it ended up not keeping him because apparently he told this young boy in some frame that he was not the right kind. I had never heard about this type of cryptid before. Have you?
The Fuzzy Man, did you say?
Yeah, no eyes, no mouth.
No, I've not heard of. No, I've not heard of that at all. But what I would say that the angle of no eyes and no mouth, that sounds very much like the so-called Slender Man.
Uh-huh. Yes, that was...
You know the Slender Man?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that was a really big thing.
Yeah, and I mean, it's actually still has a large following now, but certainly not as much as like a year or two ago. But yeah, that's the one parallel I can think of would be the fact that the Slenderman, everybody describes him as, although he has a black suit and pale, the one thing that's different is the lack of eyes and the lack of mouth. So there might be some kind of connection there. Is it in one particular area that this has happened?
I'd have to go back and listen. I was kind of half listening to this story, and then all of a sudden it was over. But there was more to it about the boy was being kept in a tree trunk, a hollowed-out tree trunk. And this fuzzy man gave him berries to eat, which is similar to some stories I've heard about Bigfoot. But didn't end up keeping him, thank God. But they never, ever found his brother.
Well, most of the reports of the Slender Man as well are in like woods and trees and forest as well. So I don't know if that is connected, but it might be worth sort of looking into it further. But the boy came up with that term, did he?
He did, yes.
Okay.
And even when the mother questioned him that, didn't he have hair, because she thought this had to be a Bigfoot, he said no, it was not hair. So very interesting. First time I've ever heard of it too. So anyway.
Well, maybe there'll be more. Maybe there'll be more exposure about whatever it is, and more people will talk about it, perhaps.
I hope so. Yeah, because if there's something like that out there, it would be nice to know more. But let's go into your new book. What made you want to write about time travel?
Well, that's a good question, really. I mean, I think a lot of people, in some ways, are sort of intrigued by time travel. I think, for one reason, I think all of us at one point or another, we kind of think, oh, if only we hadn't done this and we could go back and do that,
Right, yes.
We all have that kind of thing in our lives. And I think that's part of it, at least. It's sort of the wish, if you like, to be to go back to, I don't know, go back to school or college and do this and do this different that way, that kind of thing, or just make, if you fell down the steps, that kind of thing. You wish never done that.
Right. Yeah.
But joking aside, I think the idea or the possibility of changing the past, the present, and the future is sort of a fascinating phenomenon. And in many respects, it's almost like a unique phenomenon. The idea that you literally and possibly could alter things. And so, for me, the reason why I decided to write the book was because over the years, a lot of books have been written from on the perspective of time travel, but many of them sort of go over old ground, and and it's sort of very much like just like a time to travel reel, if you like, going over and over. And I thought, well, if I'm going to do a book, why not do something a little bit different? And so rather than just focusing on, kind of like scenarios like Back to the Future, with sophisticated time machines, and you press 1955 and you run into your mom at school, that kind of thing.
Right.
With Back to the Future. But one of the things I decided to do was to sort of take an alternative approach, looking at things, for example, possibly things like deja vu and doppelgangers might be evidence of time travel, rather than just going over the same old things, and also things like people having prophetic dreams and nightmares and things like that. And in other words, perhaps the human mind can, in our subconscious, can travel through time if in physical mode in the everyday, we're not able to do it. But when we're in the deep sleep state, that possibly, our soul, if you like, almost can possibly do things like that, sort of go through time. So I decided to go through some of the more alternative angles as to what potentially causes time travel to happen, rather than just the straightforward, like I said, the movies and hit button and then you land in 1950 or whatever.
Now, yes, but you've seen the photographs, I'm sure lots of us have, of people in old photos that look like they're talking on a phone, or there was one with a gentleman with some type of a contemporary shirt and sunglasses. And then there's that older woman that's walking down the street many years ago. It looks like she's holding some kind of a phone. You've seen those. What do you make of those?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's really interesting. I mean, again, that's sort of like, an intriguing angle, because we've got some hard evidence of an unusual character. It's actually, what it is, the story, basically, is that there was some filming being made down in Hollywood for a new Charlie Chaplin movie. And when they were doing the filming, in the background and further in the forefront, you can see this woman walking along on her own, and she's got this sort of black outfit on, and she's got something. What looks like she's holding a cell phone, and some people have said, well, there's no way it could be cell phones because we're talking about the 1920s. And if you look at the picture now, if it was, as some people think, just like sort of an earphone for people who have got bad ears,
Right. Yeah.
If it was just something like that, well, possibly we could wipe it away. However, if you watch carefully this footage, what you actually see is that she's not just holding it to her ear, she's actually speaking in response.
Right.
And of course, back in the 1920s, now there were earphones in the 1920s. That's a fact, because when this story broke, a number of people started to do research to see if there were earphones at that time, and even small ones, and there were. But that cannot explain how she was speaking in at the other end, the mouth end.
Right.
And,
yes,
yeah.
Great point.
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons why this has been sort of perceived by many people as a time traveler. And also, if you look at her and she sees the camera looking at her, you can see clearly that she's quite awkward and doesn't want to be seen with her face, and she's looking away, and she's got this black outfit, and she's also got these really, this sounds strange, but she's got these really long feet, and which has made some people think, well, was it a man in disguise, which makes it even more weird. But that story, the Charlie Chaplin time travel woman, is one of the most fascinating stories, where potentially, at least, we could say that we caught on camera or on film, a time traveler come back to the 1920s and doing their absolute best to try and avoid being outed for what they really are.
Yes. It's fascinating. And then there's also other stories, like the one that's most famous, I think, is The Man from Torrid. Are you familiar with that one?
Are you talking about the young guy?
The guy that showed up in Japan with a passport saying he was from Torrid. Nobody knew what Torrid was, so they took him into custody, basically. But he was adamant that he was from Torrid, and here was his passport to show this. And then he was taken to a high-rise. He was up on one of the upper floors, guards outside his room. And the next morning, he was not in the room. He was gone. Now, this may be more like a shift in dimensional reality than time travel, but it's one of the most incredible stories, where people came forward and said they saw him and they saw his passport, and they just didn't know anything about this Torrid place. But he was sure that's where he was from, and he couldn't believe anybody didn't know about it.
Yeah, well, that story actually, is one of the more intriguing and also sort of bizarre stories, primarily because, as you said about timelines, one of the angles of time travel isn't just that, we can go from one place, or in theory, we can go from one place to the other, but we can actually jump timelines and things like that. And timelines, basically, it's in simple terms, imagine the scenario where you travel through time and you change something, and that would cause a change in the timeline. And so you would have like an alternative reality going parallel with another one. And so one person could, in theory at least, one person could change the timeline, and what would happen would be that the things that you did, say for example in the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, one person might sort of perceive them or see them in one way, and yet another one remembers it another way, because there's this rift which is created over the timeline. And one of the theories is that cases like this, where nobody can figure out the name of this place or there or here, never heard of it, could be because they literally did not exist in the other timeline. And so it's quite a sort of a controversial angle, sort of, so to speak, in the sense that when you start meddling with timelines, you could alter realities and history and change the things that happened 2 weeks ago, things like this. And as I said, that is one of the primary reasons, and why the whole angles like this can occur, and yet nobody has any idea of who the person is, where they come from. No one can find any ID, etc., etc. And that demonstrates, the idea that somebody just out of nowhere, the most likely scenario would be that angle of creating another reality, if you like, by altering the first one.
Yeah, that is so fascinating. And then there was a gentleman from earlier times, I don't remember if it was turn of the century or earlier. He showed up on a New York City street, and he was hit by a car. He didn't have any idea where he was or what he was doing, and he was just standing in the middle of the street kind of dazed, and he was killed. And they had no record of this man anywhere, but then somebody took this a little further, looked it up, went and found his wife, who is still alive, I believe, and she confirmed that he just disappeared one day.
Yeah, I haven't heard that story. But things like that do get reported, where somebody just vanishes. It quite literally is as if they were 1 minute there or 1 second there and then gone the next. And again, a lot of time travel theorists believe that could be the case, that, if you're not careful enough to make sure that if you choose to try and time travel, you better be careful as to what the outcome's going to be. Kind of like I mentioned earlier, just briefly, Back to the Future. If you remember the movie, Michael J. Fox's brother. In the movie, one of the photographs that they're looking at, it starts to vanish bit by bit. In other words, their reality, the more and more time is being altered, equally the more and more you begin to wink out of in the time reality that you live in. And if you're unable to correct things and less, then you start to wink out, exactly like Michael J. Fox did when he was playing the guitar in Back to the Future, and his hands start to go transparent, and before you would know it, in theory, you would not only vanish, but potentially there would be a realization on the part of the person that other people don't remember you anymore, that kind of thing. So it gets really kind of creepy in some ways.
It does. I mean, gosh, I'd hate to be that guy that just showed up on a New York street only to be hit by a car. Didn't know what was going on.
That's for darn sure.
Yeah, that's awful.
But there's a lot of stories like that where people just pop up out of nowhere, sometimes wearing old clothes, things like, or at least when I say old clothes, I mean clothes to one particular era, if you like. And there's cases like that where someone just appeared and popped up, and people are like, well, he was wearing strange clothes and he was doing this.
Right.
And then they're gone, and it's easy really to put that into the sort of the components of time travel.
Yes, it is. So you were also doing a lot of research on the history of this for your book, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's several ways of sort of investigating time travel. One is like we mentioned with the Hollywood movie, the idea of looking back sort of 70, 80, 90 years ago, looking at film footage and photographs and seeing, if you can recognize someone in an old photograph, and somebody does that and actually sees someone who looks like they're wearing relatively modern-day clothing. There's a few photographs like that have been shown, and never mind just the ear devices and so on, or what it actually really was. But they're also, one of the more intriguing ways of sort of going through time is what I briefly mentioned. When you go to bed, you go into a deep sleep, and you possibly go through the sort of like an astral time zone, if you like. In other words, when we go to sleep, I think a lot of people, including myself, sometimes you have very graphic dreams to the point where they're not really just dreams. It's rather they are examples of us, sort of astrally traveling time. And I think that's why a lot of people do have sort of like prophetic dreams, nightmares of things to come. And they remember these events, or 3 or 4 months down the line, they realize that the event that they dreamed, say in February, comes true in July. A lot of people have had that. I've had that once or twice, not much at all, nothing exciting, but enough to make me believe that what I dreamed about sort of 4 months earlier did come true. Now, that's not sort of like you're using literal time machines, but is demonstrating how the human mind, the soul, can be perhaps sort of extracted out of the body, and we have the ability to, in some fashion at least, traverse time. And of course, when you wake up, you're sort of brought back. You're dragged back into your body. But I think in some of those very deep, meaningful dreams, they could very well be evidence of that angle of time travel, and it doesn't require machines or buttons to be pressed, or to go down and get a new DeLorean or anything like that. You can travel potentially through time via the human mind, and that's one of the more intriguing aspects. I mean, I have no problems with scientists, using things like wormholes, black holes, to try and alter the role, if you like, or the domain of time travel. However, but if we could achieve it ourselves in the ways I just mentioned, well, then possibly, the day could come when we could actually all do this if we knew how. But of course, there's the other angle of, should we make the changes, rather than just go straight ahead and do it?
Yeah, that's the question. I mean, how much could we disrupt by changing one little thing?
That's the question that's more concerned is, what will it change in the big picture? Is it going to enhance our world, or is it going to detract?
Well, actually, there's two theories that time traveler researchers think of. One is the angle of, if you change something, it could alter things, whether just to a little bit, or, it could create something drastic. Or the other angle is that it doesn't change the time zone that you're in. However, it could create an alternative parallel world, just surely because happened to do something wrong, and everything went wrong, and before you know it, that dangerous thing that happened didn't really affect your reality, but what it did do was to create another, and maybe it also had a spiral with another time zone, if you like. And you have this fascinating scenario that a lot of scientists believe, that every literal sort of significant event could potentially create another timeline and another timeline and another one and another one and so on, to the point where there could literally be multiple versions of all of us. Or say, for example, in 1963, JFK managed to avoid getting assassinated in Dealey Plaza, Dallas. Or there was no Second World War, that kind of thing. But and in other words, you've still got those time zones and timelines existing somewhere. It's just that there's another one. And it may be also, that might be where people also have sort of psychic experiences in their sleep again. And sometimes they have graphic dreams of things like JFK not getting shot. And so but that person may have had a brief look at the other time zone, not ours, but they have the ability to have briefly seen the other one. And so a lot of this really kind of ties up with the human mind and the power of the human mind to actually to alter time. It doesn't necessarily mean some sort of mad professor with his white coat on, and building all these machines and whatever else. It may actually be able to achieve all this literally by the psyche, if you like.
Yeah, that's even more exciting. But isn't there also some talk about the Vatican having some type of a time machine that people could look into and see Christ and see different events in history?
I haven't seen that one. No.
That was interesting also. But I will share this with you. We had Robin Foy on the show several times, and Robin was a lead medium in the Skoll experiment in the UK, and the focus of a wonderful movie called The Afterlife Investigations, which you can watch on YouTube. But 3 interviews to get the whole story out of him, because they had a team that they worked with here when they did their sittings. Then they had a team on the other side. And the team on the other side and the team here, they really bonded. They became like family. And then what happened was they were visited after 5 years of doing these sittings and having amazing things happening, apports and full-body apparitions and all this stuff.
Wow.
They had a visit from a Time Lord who said, enough, because there is a group like yours in the future, and they are trying to contact your group, and we cannot allow it. So from now on, we won't allow you to connect. And they tried it anyways, and what happened was the mediums were hit with some god-awful sounds so they couldn't concentrate, and they were not allowed to meet with that group ever again. So it prevented, even though their team on the other side and they were just as close as they could possibly be, it was this other group in the future that was going to be causing such a big problem with the timeline, according to this Time Lord.
Well, that's an interesting theory, because some people think that this also ties in with the doppelganger thing, where you're walking down the street and you see someone, you think, well, that person looks just like me, that sort of thing.
Right.
And one of the theories is that it's not sort of like an evil opposite, which is what some people believe, but you have this interesting scenario that occasionally we cross paths with time zones again, and eventually, you cross paths with one of these doppelgangers, although not really a doppelganger, it really is you, but in a different time zone. So I find that interesting, the idea that the sort of the folklore and the legend of doppelgangers may actually have a reality, but the reality is that you and another you from another time frame at one point happen to cross paths down the street, but it's perceived as a doppelganger. So again, you've got sort of a lot of scenarios to explain and to sort of think about when it comes to some of these weirder sides of time travel.
Yeah, there's so much to this. I would imagine you could have a book 2 and 3 over everything to cover everything with this. And then, of course, I got to ask you about the Mandela effect, where we are remembering things one way, but yet we're being told, no, it didn't, like there was no beam me up Scotty. I mean, I grew up on Star Trek. There was a beam me up Scotty. Not anymore. So what do you make of that?
What, with the whole Mandela thing? Well, again, I think that's a perfect example of when, for example, you're absolutely sure you heard this, or you heard that some famous actor had died, or something else happened, which was clearly something that you were sure happened, but you're not now able to find any evidence of it, even though you've still got the facts or the memories in your mind. And that whole scenario really is a fascinating one, because that creates like almost a unique situation where the phenomenon actually lets us to realize that we're probably looking at some kind of glitch, I would say. Something along the lines of, you're sitting looking out your cup of coffee in the morning and you hear the death of this person, and then 6 months later you hear it again, and there's no way it could have happened, and yet it did happen. And again, for me, that is the kind of situation where clearly some sort of rift, a rift that caused a problem, that changed things that shouldn't have been changed, but your brain was sort of impervious to it and wasn't able to sort of melt in the second scenario, if you like, and you're stuck with the original memories. That kind of thing happens a lot. And again, I think this is a perfect example of how time travel doesn't require us to have machines and dates and buttons to achieve it. This actually happens randomly, possibly as sort of an aspect of the planet,
It's so strange. I mean, this thing really gets me thinking, because, again, I grew up on all kinds of television. That was my babysitter. And, again, I love Lucy. And Desi would say, Lucy, you got some explaining to do. No, doesn't exist. Never happened. I mean, there are some... Remember that,
things that we know actually did, but we can't prove it anymore.
I know. It's like wiped. It's very, very strange to me. And that song, We Are the Champions of the World, but at the end of the song, that of the world is missing. And yet so many people, and I'm talking about even young people, because I had some interns here a couple of years ago, and they were onto this, and they were totally freaked out that We Are the Champions ended like that, and it was missing of the world. They're like, no, we remember this. So it doesn't seem to matter in terms of age. There's, believe me, a wide span between them in their 20s and me, but we remembered it the same way. So the other question, though, that I have about this is there's been some talk about CERN and how CERN is creating these glitches. What do you think about that one?
Well, yeah, I've heard a lot of weird stories about that. Not too many in relation to time travel, but I do remember that there was one story of somebody who supposedly, with CERN, started to see like visions of the future and visions of the past. Now, how that would actually be, how that would happen, I don't know. But the story was that it was almost like in a visionary kind of situation. And what made it more sort of intriguing, there was nothing particularly over the top in terms of the images. It wasn't like the end of the world or anything like that. It was just everyday imagery. But for somehow the people were being affected and having sort of brief images of something to come. And the only way I can think about it, and it is just a theory, would be that in some fashion, something along that kind of technology has the ability to change reality, reality in the sense of the timelines.
Yeah. This bothers me. I wonder what they're really up to with CERN, and if they even know what the heck they're doing, and
That's
the
right,
profound effect. Really, it
they
keeps
may
me up
not
at
be
night.
too sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm worried about it. But
well,
what a great topic.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, there are things to be concerned about. I'll give you an example. In 2017, I wrote an article for one of the companies I work for, and what had happened was that a guy had a very sort of terrifying dream of a nuclear war, and the dream was that and he was in Chicago, living in Chicago, and he had this very graphic dream of a nuclear war with North Korea, and I wrote the article, and a number of other people wrote in and said that they'd had very graphically similar dreams as well. And over the course of probably about 6 weeks, I got, I would say, about 25 stories from people all across the US, and it was a very graphic scenario of sort of satellites in orbit over the US and releasing nuclear weapons and things like this to try and destroy the country, really. And some of these stories were eerily similar to each other, to the point that when this really reached its peak in 2017, what it basically came to was that a lot of people, when everybody was talking about this in the forum and everything, were terrified that all of these different people who'd had these terrible dreams of nuclear war, they were so close to each other that they felt that there was no way that this could be reversed, and that in late 2017 there would be nuclear war. But of course, thankfully, there was no nuclear war in 2017, or as I suggested in the article, it wasn't in our 2017 timeline. But most of these people were having these scenarios in their dreams again. So I think, again, all of these people who had these terrible dreams of nuclear war in 2017 probably did see something like that, but it was a completely different 2017 timeline. But ours wasn't disrupted, but they were seeing an aspect of the other one.
That is so interesting. It's a great theory on why they all came up with such a similar dream and prophecy about the future, but thank God it didn't happen. Oh my goodness. I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense, because Just recently, PK and I were watching some remote viewers, two different groups, independent of each other. For October, they were predicting some type of a nuclear explosion in an urban area. Both independently predicting this. Thank God so far it hasn't happened. But yeah, both of them are coming up with that. And it may be what you just explained, that they're all seeing this in a different timeline, I hope. It's not ours.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So again, that's sort of an example of time travel, but it's not like the classic Hollywood, kind of scenario. Although, over times, the world of entertainment actually has done, some good jobs of making time travel entertaining, and I talk about that in the book because I think it's as well as talking about the science, the technology, and the real aspect of time travel. It's also good to sort of lay back and listen and watch like a really good time travel movie, and just think, wow, what if, that kind of thing, So, and
what are some good ones that you can recommend?
Well, there's a number of ones altogether. One of them's called Millennium. Millennium's a really good movie, and I won't tell you the whole story, but it's time travel, obviously. And in the future, what happens is that in the future, the planet and the population is degrading, and so the people from the future, what they do is that they come back to our time and they steal passengers off aeroplanes in our time just before the planes are going to crash, and so there's like this cover up in the airline industry that the bodies were never in the planes because they've been taken out of the planes and taken to the future to sort of beef up our stock, because in the future the Earth's and the people are sort of on a evolutionary decline, and that's a Millennium. That's a really good sort of well thought out movie, and I think probably one that people sort of resonate with as well. It would be Doctor Who. That's that's like the typical. That's totally 100% time travel.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
Gosh, I miss Doctor Who. What the heck are they doing? Why aren't they making more of those? It's like you're lucky if you see one a year. God, that's lazy. There's
but of course, another one.
Go ahead.
No, go on. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, the one that I loved was called Time Trap. Have you seen that one?
No, I don't think I know that one.
Oh my God! Everybody, you need to go see it. It's on Netflix. It's fabulous. Time Trap was one of the best I've ever seen. And then there was another one. It was kind of a quirky, independent movie. Had a strange title though, and of course I can't remember it. But this man puts an advertisement in the newspaper that he wants somebody to time travel with. And that was also excellent, but unfortunately I can't remember what that was. That was a small independent film.
Another one that I like, and this goes back to the late 70s, 1979. It's a movie called Time After Time, and that's a good one. Well, that's really good. Yeah,
that is a good one.
It stars David Warner and Malcolm McDowell and Mary Steenburgen, and basically what it is, it's a movie about Jack the Ripper, and Jack the Ripper finds a way to travel through time so he won't get caught in the 1800s, and that's a really well thought out story, really.
It is. And here's the one I was trying to think of.
Where there was a relationship.
Say that again.
Somewhere in time. I can't. That's all I can remember is that part of it, where this couple gets together again. They met years before in another lifetime, and they get back in this lifetime. Mm-hmm. And it's, gosh, I wish I could remember the name of it, but it was called, I think, Somewhere in Time, where they re-meet in this time zone.
Yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm.
The name of that movie I was trying to remember is Safety Not Guaranteed. It's just the cutest movie. I loved it, and I know people have told me that they felt the same way. But it's a time travel movie also. It's a fascinating thing. We're all kind of fascinated by this for one reason or another, and you talk about being able to change things in the past. And I do recall one story from Robert Monroe about a gentleman that had gone through his, series of listening to changes in consciousness, through the tapes and everything that he had. And he told Bob that he went back in time, and however he cut himself with a knife or whatever, he actually was able to change that. So it never happened. And when he came out of this consciousness state that he was in, the scar was gone. So that's an example of what you were talking about, Nick, that we do have this ability. It's our consciousness that controls this.
Yeah, exactly. I definitely do think that's why people do have these dreams, and then, 2 months later, part of that dream plays out totally, And but one other sort of more up-to-date time travel movie, which I thought was really good. It's called Sound of My Voice, and that one, it has no special effects, no other worlds or anything like that. What it is, it's about this sort of cult in California, and people sort of flock to it, and then people start to realize that the girl who runs the cult, that she is able to sort of put things out there that haven't happened yet, and there are these sort of, I guess you like call them time cops or something, that are chasing after, and by actually sort of keeping the special effects to zero, really, but
wow.
just it's done really well. You would think you would need a time travel movie to be sort of Tom Cruise and guns and whatever, and this one is the exact
Stargates
opposite.
And everything else.
Yeah, but it's sort of like a really fascinating but kind of deep story as well.
The Sound of My Voice, is that the name of it?
The Sound of My, yes. Well, Sound of My Voice, just Sound of My Voice.
Sound of My Voice.
Yeah.
So, Nick, there's a lot of people on social media. I mean, not a ton of them, but there's a few on social media that claim to be time travelers. I'm from the year blah, 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 and here's this photograph to prove it. Have you investigated any of those people?
Well, yeah. I mean, the most famous one or infamous one would be a guy named John Titor, Titor.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he came forward at the dawning of the 21st century, and when he was putting all this information out as what was going to happen in the future, there was going to be like nuclear strikes, and the future wouldn't be as good as it is now, although it's not great right now. But
really.
Yeah, and there's some interesting theories about the story of John Titor, and he basically put all these statements on the internet as to what was going to happen in the future. Said like wars, and the country and the economy would fall to pieces, and the planet wouldn't be what it used to be, and there would be a civil war. All of this, and what's particularly intriguing about this is that there's nobody really has got a sort of one particular scenario or theory. There's actually several. You've got the idea that he was a literal time traveler, he put out all his statements and all the information that he claimed he knew, and he vanished. The other one, is the idea of a hoax. And then the other one, which is the interesting one, is that it was sort of like a social experiment to see how the people of our era would respond if they knew that the people of 30 years that we would find out that they would hate us because we're reckless and whatever. And so, in other words, the idea that that scenario was put out to make us think about, try and slow things down, don't destroy the planet and the environment. But he did it under a sort of a fictional situation. But I have to say that John Titor still has a large following of people who absolutely do believe what he said, and that some of his differences were due to timelines. And so, he's not gone. Certainly his following isn't as big, but the stories are still out there, and it's still going on, yeah.
That is so cool. Now, there was another guy who invested a small amount of money, made over $300 million in the stock market. Never lost any money, just made money. And, of course, that attracted some attention. And this was front page news. So they, I believe, arrested him, but then he disappeared, vanished.
I wish I could do that.
I know. Really, Nick? Tell us how.
Yeah. I mean, that's happened, in a couple of movies. Like, for example, in Back to the Future Part 2, one of the guys, Biff, in the movie, he finds one of these almanacs, which has got all the winnings, for the next 20 of, football cups and things like this, and so he doesn't have to predict, when, this cup's going to win, this football game's going to win, this baseball's going to win, because he knows he's got all the results. And in no time at all, he's like not a millionaire, he's like a billionaire, because, like you just said, he's just had the ability to go out there and just bet on this, bet on that, and literally in no time, he's one of the most, most, excuse me, richest man on the planet. I mean, that's a, fictional, but in theory, if you could travel time in that situation, well, potentially you could do that, So.
Mm-hmm.
And you wouldn't even be robbing a bank. You'd just be winning on the lottery,
Right. You got those lottery numbers and you play them. Or in this case, this guy actually bought stocks that he just knew were going to go way, way up. And, of course, that, again, raised some eyebrows, because people are like, how can you not lose any money and just keep making more and more and more? So, yeah, I hope he took off with his money. Anyways.
Or at least
there are some,
but, I mean,
exactly. But there are some great stories.
Oh, yeah, I mean, one of the interesting things about time travel is that, it's some of it can be sort of deep and dark and frightening, but there are these sort of quite funny potential aspects to it as well. And I think that's one of the reasons why so many Hollywood movies based on time travel and with a comedy mood to them, that's why so many of these movies are so popular, because they make great stories, whether it's true or not. They are still great tales, I mean, that's why so many like cinema, in the cinema, and on TV, and so many of those movies that people just love them, Like, what was the one? the Christmas one. The old black and white one. What was it called?
Oh, It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah, Wonderful
It's
Life.
a Wonderful Life.
Yeah, that's
Jimmy
right. Yeah,
Stewart.
Wonderful Life. Yeah, I mean that was a perfect example of time and reality being changed as a means to sort of James Stewart's character to don't do this. If you do, this is what will happen. And he doesn't listen.
Right.
And it all goes wrong, and then he gets a chance to come back. And but that was a perfect example as well of reality has gone. Nobody knew who he was. He'd literally been zipped out of reality, to a 100% degree.
Yeah, and this is what it would have been if you weren't there. Yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
Well, I'd love to just also ask you, because we have about 20 minutes left, about anything new in the world of the paranormal, cryptids, men in black, any news stories that you've heard about that have been reported to you or that you've learned that our audience would also love to hear about.
Well, yeah, I mean, one of these situations, when you sort of do radio or books and conferences and lectures, you get a lot of sort of feedback, that kind of thing. And a lot of people are amazed when I tell them that I probably get somewhere in the region of, I would say, I probably get 20 to 30 men in black and women in black type cases per year. A lot of people think, the MIB phenomenon's gone away, or it's not really out there to much degree. But I get a lot of these stories. Now, what's intriguing is that the real men in black and the real women in black, they're nothing like in the movies Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones. They're nothing like that.
Right.
They're actually like really weird looking, pale, it's like the skin's sort of like white. They're sort of gaunt, shrunken cheeks, and they kind of look sort of like the worst vampire you could imagine. That's how they look, and they have the ability to sort of control people's minds, sort of like a hypnosis type situation. And they warn people and threaten them not to talk about UFO activity. They still wear these sort of 1950s fedora hats and skinny black ties and so on. And they look like they've come straight out of time. And that's why I actually got a chapter in the book about time travel and the men in black and women in black, because I think they could actually be real time travelers, and they could even be something along the lines almost of like archaeologists, that kind of thing, following us and what we're doing, and or historians in some respects as well. But yeah, when you mentioned about things that that pop up, when people just call me up or email me or whatever, I get a lot of these stories of the men in black. I also get a lot of Bigfoot cases as well, and so in other words, there's no shortage still of Bigfoot type sightings. Primarily, most of the ones I get are from the Pacific Northwest, but also a lot of them in and around sort of the swampy areas, sort of Florida, Louisiana, places like that. And
right.
And again, we're talking about sort of large, sort of 6-7 foot tall ape-like creatures. So yeah, I mean that's there's no shortage of any of the things that I write about. There's never really a shortage of the stories coming forward.
And do you think it's even getting more pronounced? Because we hear all the time, the veil is getting thinner and thinner, and people seem to be having more experiences, even in their own homes, that aren't necessarily haunted, but it just seems like there's something going on. There's more of this. Do you have that same experience?
You mean like in an increase? You mean? Or?
Yes, it's increasing.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, there's some things I don't investigate only because it's not really my area, and I've never really sort of got into it. And that's sort of like ghosts and haunted houses. I've never sort of really got me, if you like. But I have a lot of friends who are in that field, and one of the things that I've heard over the last year or two within that field, if you like, the more the paranormal angle of things increasing, is reports of what's been known as the shadow people and the hat man. I don't know if you've heard of those. They're sort of like shadowy figures that people see in their bedrooms at night, and they wake up at like 2 a.m, and there's like a figure in the room, or what looks like a shadow, like a one-dimensional thing in the room, and they sort of got like a black suit and a black fedora hat, kind of like the Men in Black, but they just stand in the room staring at people, and the people are very often unable to move for a while. It's just sort of, they're frozen with fear. But a lot of people I know have been getting more and more reports of these shadow people and the Hat Man. And one theory is that they sort of manifest in our bedrooms when we were asleep and we were unable to do anything about it, and that they sort of drain our energy, sort of like a paranormal parasite kind of situation. So yeah, try to avoid them.
How do you keep them away? Yeah, really. Yeah. What do you have to do? Like put salt all around the bedroom, or how do you keep them out?
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah,
I mean that's one of the things why I think one of the reasons why so many of these kind of experiences occur in the bedroom. I think the main reason is because we are vulnerable at that point. When we're asleep, that's the one point of every day when we're vulnerable, and particularly so between about 1 and about 3 to 3:30, and particularly about 2 to 3:30. That's when we're in our deep sleep state, and so that's when you're really at your worst time, so to speak, and I think that's why we're getting so many of these Hat Man cases, and
that
the people
sense.
have said, a number of the people have said that in the morning they've just felt wiped out and soaked in sweat, and as if they've been just beaten to pieces.
Wow,
there is
awful.
Something that this dimension and the other dimension is probably the distance of about a curb. Is that true?
I'm sorry, say that again.
That this world and the next, the dimension between the two is actually about the distance of a street curb. That's only about 10, 12 inches difference between the two dimensions.
Oh, I see. I'm not entirely sure about that, but what I can tell you, there are some cases, again, with the Men in Black, where, and again, bear in mind that a lot of people have suggested they could be time travelers, but the Men in Black, there have been a lot of sightings of them where it's almost literally like they sort of just walk straight through one reality into another, but it only took them seconds. It was like as if they walked through something, and their head and body has already gone through, and then the legs, the leg comes through after in seconds. So in other words, I think what you were saying, in other words, what this would demonstrate is that you could walk or run, through that other reality in seconds. It's not like you've got to go through some sort of portal that's sort of a mile long or anything like that. You literally can sort of it's just like going through, your front door and then closing the front door behind you. There's a lot of cases like that where they, it's like the click of a finger. They're there, and then as they go through the next portal, they're not there, and there's barely seconds, So.
Gosh. Wow. Now, with the Men in Black, I think last time you were on, you talked quite a bit about them, and as I recall, they have that pasty, waxy appearance, but also people have described that their eyebrows are basically drawn on. It's like a makeup that they're wearing.
Yeah, that's exactly. That sounds really odd. In fact, it is odd. But most of them, when you see them up and close, it looks like they've got sort of like Halloween, like paint. Somebody's going down to the local store for Halloween to paint the face. Totally white. But their skin looks like that all the time. So for them, it's the other way round. They try and change their skin to sort of a more human-like makeup, I guess, if you like. There's other cases where it looks like they were wearing large, either sunglasses, or usually sunglasses to hide their eyes, because very often they have these sort of bulging eyes. They seem too big, almost like a high thyroid condition, and but they hide that with their sunglasses. So you've got that, and many of the both the men and the women as well. You can clearly tell that some of them, or many of them, wear these long wigs, or the men wear like a short black wig, and the women wear these long black wigs. So if you think about it, if you remove the wigs and the glasses and the makeup, they'd look pretty much like aliens, the skinny, black-eyed aliens, that everybody's familiar with. But by changing the skin color, putting the masks on, putting the wigs on, and so on, you could actually get away without being seen too easily. And I think that's what happens, because for the most part, but as I said, they really don't look normal, but with a bit of effort, they can actually almost make themselves look like us.
Now, what's their goal, though? What's their end game? All this threatening people, don't talk about UFOs or abductions. What's the deal with that? Why?
Well,
and who's behind that?
Well, that's a good question. One of the theories is that that they are actually time travelers, and that they're trying to prevent us from finding out what they really are, and so they emphasize the UFO angle, but they do it deliberately to drive us away from the time travel angle. And in one sense, that would make sense. In one sense, that would make some sense. That they want us not to know that they are time travelers, so we give them more and more data and stories, and that pushes us down a flying saucer UFO alien angle, and the person, the witness or the victim, is then placed into a situation where they're sure that they were being silenced by aliens, but using the alien angle as a camouflage, so they wouldn't know or even think about the time travel angle. That would be an easy way of getting away with that. An easy way for time travelers to insert themselves into our society, and that's probably also one of the reasons why they almost always comes out at night, because it's dark and you're not able to see them too well. If they're standing in the porch, if they're standing in the porch, and they start threatening you, but it's 9 o'clock at night. Again, that's good camouflage. So everything about the Men in Black, is sort of creepy and weird and sinister.
It is. I'm surprised nobody's captured one yet.
Well, that's another interesting thing. It's kind of like with the other angle as well, where a lot of people have said that, the men in black, the person, the victim, have allowed the men in black or the women in black to come in the house, like at 9 or 10 or 11, to threaten them. And nobody would do that normally. And it suggests that, to some degree, the MIB have a significant degree of mind control. And
yep.
And I think that applies to all these things. Like you just said, most people would not do things like this. You wouldn't let somebody in the house. You wouldn't let. You wouldn't stand there just waiting, for them to threaten you or whatever. You would lock the door and call 911.
Right.
But people don't do that. And again, this kind of ties in with mind control and the ability to cause us to do what they want us to do rather than the other way around. Yeah,
that's right. Now, has there been any talk about them having a hive mind, that they're not really independent?
Well, actually, there could be. I haven't personally come across any, but what I would say, which is a little bit strange, is that very often they usually surface in threes. Now, with the women in black, it's usually 2, and with the men in black, it's usually 3. Why that should be, I don't know. So we're not talking about like a huge hive, but there is that. It's never usually just one. It's very rarely that you'll see them just once, or the witness says there was just one. It's usually 3. So that in itself, is interesting also.
Yeah, and it would be intimidating to anybody if they open the door and there's 3 of them standing there, not just one. So it'd be harder to capture one.
Yeah.
Tie him up and say, "Tell me who you are."
Yeah,
but,
one would be
with 3 of them, it's a bit of a hard thing to do unless you're an expert martial artist or something. But like you said, the mind control thing is very troubling, because even if you had every intention to keep them out of your house, they might just force themselves on you in your house just because they can.
Yeah. That's an important angle as well. Yeah.
And these are closely related to the black-eyed kids too, right? Or is that a totally different thing?
Yeah. You could actually make a case that they, in some way, that you could make this connection directly. Now, I don't think it's as simple as it's like good old mom and dad and the kids. I don't think it's like that.
Right.
That would be like too bizarre.
Right.
What I do think is that it's one interesting theory that was put forward was the idea that the children, if you like, the black-eyed children, could be are created, almost grown, like robot. They're grown, but they're robots, like a biological robot, and that possibly some of them are grown to look at a certain height and a certain size, and then the same with the men and the women. In other words, we might not be actually seeing them in their own real form, but they have been sort of camouflaged by changing their sizes and colors and etc. And the reason why I say that is because the sort of angle of what the black-eyed children do is exactly like the men in black and women in black do. That's to say, they'll knock on people's doors late at night. They'll try and find a way in the house, and very often they actually do manage to get in, and that's because, again, of mind control. Whereas the men in black wear black wigs, and the men wear black wigs as well. And then you've got the black-eyed children. They wear pulled-down black hoodies, but their skin looks pale as well. and it's always at the doorstep where they come. So you've got a lot of these parallels between the black-eyed children and the men in black. And again, it's one of those weird phenomena that's only been around about 17, 18, 19 years now. But reports are still coming along, and people are still describing them dressed in black, knocking the doors late at night, and it's almost impossible to say there isn't a connection, with the black-eyed kids and the MIB.
Yeah, but with the men in black, it seems like they have a purpose to intimidate people and stop them from talking about UFOs, abductions, etc. But with these kids, it's just like, what have they gone rogue? They're just harassing people and wanting to drain their energy like little vampires?
That's what some of the people think, that they're sort of energy drainers, and that they just, because they very often, they'll ask to be inside, to come inside. Men in black, women in black, they do that as well, and that parallels with the old, like Eastern Europe vampire stories where, you cannot cross the threshold until you've allowed the person or the vampire to come in. And that parallels the black-eyed kids. That none of them will enter unless you ask them. So again, I think possibly this is sort of like a draining of energy. When it's time for them to eat, they don't go down to the local burger place or whatever. They literally drawn the person of their, they drain them of their energy, and then basically they're fueling themselves.
Gross.
Yeah.
That's happened to a number of people. I do recall seeing some television reenactments with that, and it was very frightening. And I remember the people saying that they had such a bad feeling, like when the kids approached the window of the car or whatever, they were just overwhelmed with a terrible feeling. So I guess that's important. People need to know to pay attention to that.
Yeah, and as I said earlier, the big problem is that very often this occurs in like a nighttime, or worse still, deep sleep situation, particularly with like the Hat Man and things like that, the shadow people, because we're all asleep. That's the one time every one of us is vulnerable. And so I think this is being done deliberately, for the places and the locations and the times. It's all being done very easy on their part, I think.
Yeah, and there is such a thing as sleep paralysis that during a part of our sleep process where we can't move. So, yeah, I would think they would take advantage of that.
Well, yeah, I actually don't think that sleep paralysis is internal. I mean, it is a real phenomenon, and I mean, you can actually find, if you Google sleep paralysis, you will actually find descriptions on some of the United States' most well-known pharmacies have got their own sections on sleep paralysis. It sounds strange, but yeah, a lot of them have got their own websites and explaining what it is. However, my view is I don't believe that sleep paralysis is internal to the human mind. I think sleep paralysis is basically we're put into a state of that by these paranormal things. But and when they want to, sort of get in our place, get into our homes, or manifest, because some kind that they're not even sort of in 3D. They're more sort of like a spiritual kind of ghostly thing. However, in saying that, there's a lot of stories where, for example, people.
We're going to have to end. I'm sorry, Nick, but we're going to be cut off. Oh God, we're going to have you back near the end of this story.
Don't worry.
Well, thank you so much. It's been so fascinating. Oh, my God. We love having you on the show. So thank you.
Definitely.
Good luck with your book. Again, Adventures in Time Travel, everybody. Go out and get it. It's a great one. So,
Thank
Nick,
you.
we'll stay in
Thanks,
touch.
guys.
And thank you.
Thanks,
So next week, everybody, we'll be back with another great show, Paranormal Places. And until then, we'll see you on the Blue Highway. Good night.
Good night.
Thanks for listening. Tune in next week for another radio adventure with Supernatural Girl.